Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Lead Her podcast. Today we are in the company of the lovely Dr Kate Blackford from Origami Cognitive Hypnotherapy and from TMP as well. And we actually met down in London at a TMP event, which Kate was presenting at. She did an incredible talk at the event, which is held for coaches and entrepreneurs. It's all about helping them unlock any kind of self-doubt they've got or struggles that they've got in their business to kind of become the best that they can be in their business. And Kate also helps women free themselves from anxiety, self-criticism and worry, which I know myself and many of our listeners have struggled with or will be struggling with. Kate also has a degree, I've got my fingers ready, we've got a degree in psychology and a Ph.D in organisational psychology. And you've also got many years of experience in leadership as well and coaching people and organisations through positive change. So Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I'm really excited to be here.
Good. And from that introduction, is there any other skills that we could add to that? Because I feel every time I meet you, there's something else that I have learned that you have been through or that you've learned. Is there anything we would add to that incredible list?
I think you got most of it. The only thing I would add is artist.
And dog mum.
Yes, and dog mum to two really ill-mannered, badly behaved dogs. That probably says more about me.
Amazing. And you can probably hear from that introduction why we have got you here as a guest. Like, we want this podcast to help women become the best that they can be, unlock their full potential. And I was struggling a little bit with this podcast, like what route we went down, because I know you help women in so many different ways through building their self-esteem, building their confidence through menopause and through eating behaviours as well. So there's so much to your knowledge, but I felt like I personally wanted to kind of start a little bit with you and your own life and your own journey, because I know you've been through your own self-development journey, which has led you down to what you kind of do today. So I was just wondering, would you be happy maybe to kind of discuss your struggle and what you went through in the past to go into further education?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Where would you like me to start?
Well, I guess you were a little bit unhappy in the past with your job and you're a bit unfulfilled. And I think a lot of women really kind of feel like that. And that you had your own therapist that then took you down that path.
Yeah, so it started when I was a child, the anxiety stuff, and low self-esteem, always very self-conscious, very shy. And when I went to university, I actually suffered with anorexia, and I'm nearly 5'10". I went down at my worst to just over 5 stone in weight. I don't know what that is in kilograms, but it's quite light. So a whole raft of other issues kind of came with that. And I ended up scraping through my degree and coming out of university and not really knowing what I wanted to do, but nonetheless, no longer an unhealthy weight. And I'm being really careful with my words there, because I wasn't in a healthy state. I just wasn't considered anorexic anymore. And I sort of fell into various jobs and hopped around quite a lot, and eventually ended up working in consultancy. And that was kind of what started me on the path to where I am today. And I work for a really little company of consultants who were looking at the psychology of risk and safety. So we worked in a lot of heavy industry, pretty much. So mining, tarmacking roads, manufacturing, logistics, port, shipping, freight, all the kind of really old school heavy industries where there's the highest risk generally. Some quite interesting cultures to work within. And that was how I kind of got interested in the cultural stuff and the leadership stuff, because when you're looking at risk and safety from the psychological perspective, it actually does really depend on the culture of the environment that you're working with, the leadership or leadership style and structure that you're working within. And so I kind of started to get more kind of interested in that side of things. And then in 2008, early 2009, it was, the recession hit in 2008. There was a big recession and I got made redundant in 2009. And just couldn't get another job.
No.
Couldn't get another job. And I don't know if anybody else out there has had an experience of redundancy, but it really, at that point in my life, it completely destroyed my sense of self-esteem, my self-worth. My whole identity had been wrapped up in what I did for a living. And I'd never realized that. So whilst it was incredibly challenging at the time, when I reflect back on it, it was a great experience for highlighting actually how one-dimensional my kind of my sense of identity had become. And so I ended up in my 30s going back to university to do a PhD, because I thought that'd be a great idea. There were no jobs around. I felt kind of stagnant in my career. I didn't know that I wanted to go back to exactly what I'd been doing before. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll go and get another qualification. So I found a funded PhD opportunity with the University of Bath, and I put in an application and went through the interview process, and they picked me, much to my utter shock, quite frankly. So I went back to uni, and it was a real myriad of emotions and experiences, because on the one hand, I was more mature. So I kind of had a bit more confidence because of my life experience, particularly in studying organisational psychology. But I hadn't studied for years. And if you don't use that part of your brain, it does get a bit lazy, if I'm honest. So it was quite a shock to the system trying to go back and actually starting to study again. And with a PhD, it's so different to a degree or a master's, because you don't have any structure. You have your question, and then you design the way that you're going to answer your question, and then you go out and do it. So it's really unstructured as well. So that was quite a challenge. Added to which I was having to get up at 6 a.m. to drive to Bath from Reading, because I live in Reading, and I didn't want to relocate. So there were loads of sort of learnings and challenges in there. But also I got some great experiences. I got to go and teach research study skills to degree level students. I got to guest lecture and do a couple of spots for the master's course on organisational psychology. So I got some really lovely experiences as well through the opportunity to do that. And actually, after I'd graduated, I was a workplace-based supervisor for another PhD student, which was a lovely experience to have. So it was quite an interesting kind of, on the one hand, there were all these wonderful experiences that were so kind of confidence building and affirming that I did have value after the knock of the redundancy. But then there was the struggle with the studying, where I was like, I don't even know how to do this anymore.
How many years was it for going back to study for?
So I took 5 years to write my PhD. So usually if you do them full time, they take 3 years. And I did a bit of full time, and then I went back to work full time and finished off part time. So it was a bit of an epic journey, I'll be honest. And the bit I liked the least was writing up the study. And that was the bit that took the time, actually getting my head into writing it. And also the thing was that I'd spent a number of years translating academic research into information in a form that anybody could absorb and understand and apply. And now suddenly I was having to go back into writing in a very academic way. And part of me was really resistant to that, because I was like, knowledge should be available to everyone. We shouldn't use language as a barrier to people accessing knowledge and insight. So there was this whole internal battle. I have to write in this particular way to satisfy academic criteria, but I really don't want to.
And I guess in a way, like a lot of women, when they do hit their 30s, have maybe like you'd already studied at like maybe what would it be, 18, 19, 20, we've already done through studying. So then kind of going into studying again, a lot of women can be really put off it, especially like the thought of 5 years. Like, but that time's going to pass anyway, whether you do something with it or not. So What do you feel kind of kept you moving forward and not being too intimidated by the time gap that it was going to take to get that PhD?
To be honest, and forgive the dogs barking in the background if you can hear them, I'm so sorry. I did tell you they were unruly and undisciplined. So I'll be honest with you, I didn't really think about it at the start. It was just, I cannot keep applying for job after job and getting rejection after rejection. I need to feel like I'm doing something productive with my time. Yeah. I need to feel like in some way I'm moving forward. So it was almost like the decision was made for me, because I'd picked up bits of contract work in between from the redundancy, but nothing that was really fulfilling me or nothing that I wanted to take forwards. And so it was the only option to me at the time that I felt like would allow me to continue to move forward. And I also, I did other things around it as well to help pay the bills. So I worked part-time in a pub. I went back to bar work. Yeah.
And you would learn more stuff about you. And with you doing that, did you, if the redundancy didn't happen, do you feel that you maybe would have went into further education, or do you not know? Do you think you still had that pull?
I wonder if I might have just carried on doing what I was doing and wondering where I should have been. I do think that while it was really challenging at the time, and I do apologise for the barking in the background. This is going to be one long podcast. If I'm really sorry about the dogs barking, they're usually so good. So I think I would have carried on floating around, and maybe I would have come to it eventually, but I think that actually the redundancy, while it was really tough at the time, was actually, I guess, kind of the shove I needed to actually think about doing something different and expand my horizons a bit.
Yeah. So we did our PhD, and then where have you kind of taken things since then?
So since then, I went back into consultancy for a while. Just while I figured out where I was going to go. And then I did that for a bit and reaffirmed that I didn't particularly want to be doing it for somebody else all the time. And then I went into leadership positions. So I started to do roles that were around culture change within organisations as a senior leader within an organisation. So I worked for Network Rail for a bit. I worked for a company called SGN, Scotia Gas Networks, for a bit. So again, quite heavy industry. And then most recently, Associated British Ports. And I was looking after the culture change programme for their whole company. So they've got 21 ports all around the UK.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was always on the go, always traveling somewhere. And doing something and meeting incredible people, like the guys out on the docks. And I had this fantastic experience once where I was doing some work with a particular team down in Southampton, and I wanted to really understand what they did and how their job worked. So I decided I was going to go out on a shift with them. And in my wisdom, decided to go in the middle of December on a night shift.
Wow. Oh God, that sounds horrible.
Freezing. It was absolutely freezing, but my goodness, did I get an understanding of what they had to deal with in the course of doing their jobs. And I always loved those experiences, working with all of the people kind of at the front line and really kind of taking time to understand their position. I think often leaders don't do that enough, or even at all. They might pop out on a scheduled site visit. They don't put on their bright orange personal protective equipment with the hard hat and the gloves and the boots and the whole lot. It looks stunning. I think I can safely say orange is not my colour. But, and they really appreciated that I just took the time, not only to just go and sit in a nice warm break room and chat to them, but actually go out and get out on the job and see what they were doing and experience it with them. And that was hugely powerful in bringing those kind of people on board with the culture change program that I was working on. So yeah, I think that's, if I was to give like one big leadership tip, it's go out and really learn what people at all levels of the organisation do, but go out and do it with them. Don't ask them about it in a nice cozy room over a nice warm cup of coffee. Don't just go out and do it in the summer. Go and experience
Get
it.
the hands dirty. And
Yes.
we do have a few Lead Her members who do kind of work in kind of male dominated industries like that, and it does cause some bust ups between the two of them. And sometimes you can see a woman who is very educated and has worked her way through to get to a certain level, and you've got the other men there that have done the work as well, but they seem to kind of clash, and maybe when it is a smaller woman, they can be kind of dominated a little bit. So like, I guess, is that something that you've maybe kind of experienced, like working in those fields? And is there any kind of advice you could give to women who maybe feel like they just want to go into their inner child and feel small when they are being shouted at, or they are feeling aggression towards them? Like, how do we manage that in a better way?
Yes. I've had so many experiences, and I will not attach any in any particular order to any particular organisation.
Yeah.
But I've had, in consultant roles, I've had directors saying, "What does a little girl know about our business?"
Mm-hmm.
We don't want a woman to train us because our guys won't connect with a woman. We need a man.
Yeah.
A colleague on a senior leadership team, as I walked into a meeting room, once tapped his lap and said, "There's a seat for you here."
No.
One particular colleague in an organization, he would use his size and tone, and he would stand over you, and he was quite a big guy, stand over you and really kind of quite aggressive, intimidating. And do you know what? I really don't like that. I really, really don't like it. And I've seen different women respond in different ways to it. And some women try to act more like men in the workplace to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And that was never, ever even an option for me, because I couldn't be anything but me.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it was incredibly, I'm not saying it was easy, it was incredibly uncomfortable. I would just hold my ground and just say nothing often, just say nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and stare, or just turn around and walk away and go to a seat at the other end of the room and just sit myself down and get myself prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And if they follow it up, I just say, "Well, I really don't appreciate being spoken to like that." But that was hard. I'm not going to say it isn't, because when you're particularly, I mean, I was often one of the, if not the only woman in the room, one of the few women at that kind of position in organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was challenging. I think the other thing was that the other way that I've been undermined is men starting rumors about me.
Okay.
So a particularly funny one was a rumor about me having a fling with a female colleague.
Oh, wow.
My partner Paul was really pleased to hear about that one. There was also another one about me having a fling with a male colleague who's married, which could have been really destructive to his relationship. It was just, and those things, I always just laughed them off, because I just thought, wow, if people want to think I'm colourful, then let them. People that know me will know that. I was always more concerned for anybody else who was impacted by it. But I would always talk to my partner about it. We'd have a good laugh. And actually, the male colleague that I was supposedly having a fling with, when he and I used to work together, I'd have him on the phone and I'd say to Paul, "Oh, it's my other man," on the phone. So I used to just not let it get to me and not take it too seriously. And I think, for me, even though I would get called fluffy psychologist and all of these kind of things, I could only be me. And so, I felt like I proved myself in my ability to get out there on site with people, to really connect with people at all levels, and to kind of get the evidence I needed to know what I was doing. If people chose not to listen to that, that's not on me.
Yeah. So I think, like, probably the biggest thing there is when you said about not replying or keeping quiet, because I think sometimes, like, silence is power, and a lot of people don't realize that. Like, and I think when people are angry or raising their voice, they're not listening. Their ears are switched off. So there's almost no point in arguing back sometimes, and taking space away helps you calm down. Because when people are acting that way towards you, your heart rate increases, like adrenaline's going through your body. it's quite difficult. So it is good just to take that space and gather your thoughts and let the situation calm down. And that can be so powerful, because they're like, why is she not reacting? Why is she not quitting? Why is she not giving up? They probably see you more powerful than anything from just kind of taking that time out, I guess.
Absolutely. And the other thing, so silence, stepping back, or speaking really quietly and softly. Because even if they're still shouting over you, as long as you don't shout back, you don't add fuel.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. But yeah, it was tough, and it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that. And I think the thing that made me more committed to being me, rather than trying to conform to the norms of behavior within some of the more dominant men in leadership positions, was that, you know, if we truly want diversity in businesses, you're not getting that if women go into businesses and try and act like men. You know, true diversity of thought, diversity of style of working, diversity of leadership, diversity of belief, ideology, all of these things can be hugely powerful. They can create understanding, they can engender greater inspiration and creativity and collaboration. And that's only going to be a positive thing. So why would we go into an environment and not be true to ourselves, not share the unique perspective that each of us has to offer? I wasn't able to do that.
Yeah, and I guess you believed in what you were doing as well. And I think that really helps, like when you know the direction you want to go down and you know who you are, and you know the outcome the business and the center is going to kind of have from the work that you do, then that keeps you showing up, because you know eventually it's all going to work and it's all kind of come together. And it's just having that belief in yourself, I think, maybe helps as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that linked back into my connection with people and connecting with people at all different levels in all different roles and functions, because that kept me absolutely laser focused on the fact that I was there, my job was there to keep people safe, healthy and well, to create a culture that actually wasn't only about making sure people went home in the same state they came in, but positively added to their life.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm really passionate about. I don't think organizations should just be stopping at, whether you're talking about safety, health, well-being, anything. It shouldn't stop at no accidents or no occupational health cases or no, you know, mental ill health cases. It should be, this organization actively does things to enhance people's lives and experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And do you feel like, in a way, the first time it happens is sometimes makes you stronger for the next time? I guess because it is experience, and I think every time you're put out your comfort zone or made to do something that's difficult, you do get stronger from it. And that's not to justify other people's behavior in any way, but I do feel the more you experience something, the better you get at managing it and dealing it, and you learn what tactic you maybe did take that got a better outcome with that individual. That maybe the first time it will be horrible and it will be hard when people speak to you in a certain way, but the next time you'll maybe manage it better and you'll be able to sleep better that night. I can imagine the first time you've experienced these things, you've lay there struggling to sleep and worried about all these things that could or might happen to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think as well, the other thing that I did was I did go, when I was working in some of these environments, if it was particularly challenging, I went and got some help from a therapist to see if there are any underlying triggers in there. Because often there can be things that trigger us that we're not necessarily aware of. And I had had a particular experience where I'd found the behavior of a male colleague very threatening. And I wanted to understand why I'd found that so threatening, what was creating such a strong reaction from me. And so I went and got not only some resolution on that, but some tools and tips for how to own my space a bit more, and how to do those things, like, because I didn't just automatically know to stand there quietly and just use silence. I didn't know that. I had to learn it, and some of it was trial and error and some of it was going and doing the work. So.
Yeah. And do you feel it's maybe changing in a little way? Like, I know there is some rules and regulations coming inside the business place now where they are understanding women better and the kind of help we need. Do you feel like it's getting a little bit better, that there is more support if we are feeling that way at work, or do you feel it's still probably much the same?
I would love to say I think it's getting better. I couldn't say that, hand on my heart, honestly, I don't. I think sometimes it's actually becoming more insidious, so it's harder to kind of call people on. And that's why if we hear like the kind of the sexist comment or the sexist joke, it's on all of us to challenge it. And I think the difficulty with that is that you start to have that conversation and people go, well, this is, you know, political correctness gone mad.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about relationship. I had this wonderful colleague I worked with he was close on retirement when I worked with him, very old school, absolutely brilliant. And he could get away with calling me the fluffy psychologist because he and I had a connection that we understood each other. And I knew it wasn't malicious. I knew it wasn't belittling. It was his way of actually crediting me. And I would go out of my way to make him blush because it was so easy to do. And we had a real banter relationship. So I think it's about relationship. You know, it's not all office banter is bad if it is not within a relationship that is understanding that it's banter and accepting of it, then it's a problem. Or if it's at the expense of someone else, then it's the problem. And I think that's the thing that often we lose when these conversations are coming up in the news and the media is the nuance of, you can't just make a line and say it's this side of the line or it's this side of the line. Unfortunately, it's a bit more delicate than that, because come on, we've all got a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Most of us.
I feel like in a way though there is outside sources of help now though. Like I feel like there's podcasts like this, there's lots of podcasts I've listened to you do as well, where I feel we can at least relate to each other and know that we have these struggles and that they happen, and maybe just having other people that understand it rather than feeling like, oh, I should just accept this and this is the way it is. It's like, well,
Definitely.
it's
Yeah, I think definitely externally
think about it more, don't we?
Yeah, there is a lot more. And I think that's one of the things that why I'm always happy to talk about my experiences and to be open about them, why I'm talking, you know, trying to get out there and talk about things like perimenopause and the menopause and all of those elements of even of, you know, women's experiences through their reproductive life. It's so important that we understand these things and we talk about them, because for whatever reason, there's been all this sort of secrecy around all of these women's issues, and they're under researched, they're underfunded, they're not understood. So yeah, we have to get out there and help each other. And I think you're right, there's loads of those external sources, and there are organizations out there who are investing and doing the work. And you know, I do a bit of do a bit of contracting till consulting still with organizations. I screen the organizations I work with very carefully to make sure they're at the right stage of cultural development for that. But you know, there are some out there who I've recently done a series of little bite-sized videos about menopause, and not only just for women for the symptoms, but for leaders, how to support your staff if they're going through this, and for getting good sleep and for good nutrition and for kind of just much more general well-being, sessions on anxiety and depression and how to manage them and what to do. And so yeah, there are organizations out there who have some incredible people within them who are really pushing this stuff forward. So there are little glimmers with the organizations, and a big glaring spotlight outside, I think, from people like you doing podcasts and, you know, making the conversation happen.
Yeah, because I remember hearing something recently, and it was saying about a good woman is an easygoing woman. And I always had that myself growing up, that I wanted to be really easygoing, I wanted to be funny, I wanted to just like laugh things off, and everything's just the way it is, just get on with it. And until you kind of really stop and you go, actually, that's not okay. Like I shouldn't be who told me to be easygoing? And it's just like, and I've only really kind of realized that recently, that you don't need to be easygoing and to please men. It's just so funny, like how I've recognized that recently. And I do think I notice that more from people actually speaking about these things and speaking about our experiences and speaking through problems like this, so that we can know that it still exists. It's not perfect, but there's ways that we can manage it and chat about it together than people pleasing and just getting on with it, because it shouldn't be accepted, really.
no, and it is still the case that when women assert themselves, they are often labelled as aggressive, whereas men are labelled as assertive. So, and you're right, and I think, you know, that women are being so stretched by conflicting demands on them, by what kind of job they're supposed to have, what kind of home they're supposed to have, what car they should have, how they should dress, how they should look, what size they should be, being a perfect mum, being a good employee, being bright but not too bright, being opinionated but expressing those in a way that's acceptable. You know, don't be too skinny, don't be too fat, don't be too gobby, don't be too quiet. And a lot of these things are conflicting in different areas of women's lives. So it's no wonder that women have anxiety or low self-esteem or low self-worth or self-doubt or limiting beliefs, because what bit are they supposed to believe when, and who are they supposed to be in any given circumstance? And I guess it goes back to the book that we were talking about at the beginning that I recommended to you. There's a book that I love called Unbound, A Woman's Guide to Power by Kasia Urbaniak. And she's got a fantastic backstory. She's a fascinating woman. But she talks about actually when we step into our power, it's about connecting with what we want internally, what we want to express, what we want to be, what we want to do, who we are internally. And that connection with our internal desires will enable us to really powerfully communicate those externally. And I think that's really true. I think when we are in alignment, when we are being our authentic self, that's when we can really connect with people. That's when we can really have powerful conversations and make powerful connections. And, you know, so I think that that's really important, because society pulls you in so many different directions. Sometimes it's hard actually to be able to figure out where am I in this? And that's often what I help women do. They come to me, they're like, I'm lost. I feel like I've lost myself. Maybe the youngest kid is just kind of getting independent at school, and they're thinking of what they're going to do next. They're going to go back to work full time, or do they want to try starting their own business? What do they want to do? But who are they in amongst mum, wife, housekeeper, employee? So yeah, I think it's so important, because how can you communicate powerfully and passionately and connect with people if you don't know really what it is that you want to communicate?
Yeah, and I absolutely love that. And that's where Lead Her kind of came from, was myself. Like, I was lost last year and I just felt so stuck, and I wasn't in alignment. Like, I wasn't following the path that I wanted to follow down. I was a little bit constructed with this way of, should I stay the coach that just helps people look a certain way because that's what people want? But that didn't make me happy, to actually being like, okay, actually, let's look at the deeper stuff that I know women actually need help with to build their confidence and to feel good about themselves and find the things that they want to do, because I know that's where happiness really comes from. Not just, of course, if you do all of this, then you're going to get fitter, you're going to get healthier, and you will see physical benefits, but you're also going to see career benefits and lifestyle benefits, and then us just going down that route. And that took me a while just to kind of find what my alignment was. So I love when you say that, because I feel so clear and crisp in who I am and what I want to do now from discovering that. Whereas when I was torn, my confidence was low and I wasn't feeling my happiest. And I think we don't realize that when we're not living the way we want to live, that's where you feel lost and you don't know who you are and you do struggle. So I guess that kind of comes on awesomely to our next question, which was, with you work with a lot of women and you're helping them kind of overcome self-criticism, anxiety, worry, self-doubt, criticism. So you help a lot of women with these kind of issues. So what do you feel would be the right kind of steps for people that are feeling that way to like kind of overcome that? Is there anything from what you've done with your clients that you've seen really rewarding and really helping them?
Yeah, I think that the thing is it's often about actually simplifying it, because we are so inundated with people's opinions, with different perspectives, with different ideas, with different demands or standards or expectations. And I think it really is actually about stepping back from that and just actually turning down the volume on some of all that external noise. So whether that's through going for a walk in the countryside and just breathing and reflecting and starting to get into practice, even if it's just for 10 minutes, just get out and get somewhere where it's a bit quieter, where there's not the phones and the traffic and the people and the clamour. Because I think then if you separate yourself from it, that's when you can start to reconnect. I think we get so bombarded with external messages and communication and social norms and all of these kind of things that it's really hard to hear what is actually going on within us. And so I think taking that time out, so through meditation or through walking or going for a jog or whatever it is that works for you, but getting yourself away from external influences and just actually then starting to practice connecting in with maybe what are the things that I really love? What are the things that make me feel inspired? When have I felt really confident and good in my life? What things make me feel less confident and good? And actually starting to figure out the edges of the things that are nourishing you and the things that perhaps are depleting you. And then you can start to narrow it down to what things really could be the reflection of me and my true self. And then you can start to understand more about who you are as a person and your beliefs in that way as well, by just reflecting on what things you value, what things that you would absolutely stand up for, what things you believe is right, what things you believe are wrong. Where's your value set? What are your beliefs? What are your aspirations? And that can be really hard to do, because particularly women, in amongst all the demands, can become really disconnected from that. So again, in her book, Cassia Urbaniak suggests a couple of exercises, which I absolutely love. And she says, start with the bad girl protocol. So you get a little notebook, and the bad girl protocol, you write down every bad thing that you want to do.
I've not got to that part in the book yet. I'm looking forward to it.
However bad, however evil, however awful it seems, write it all down. Keep a book and keep writing it down. And then have another book, a book of desires. And in that one, write down every desire you have, however outlandish, however inaccessible it might seem. Because through doing that, actually what we're doing is we're acknowledging the things that we think are too unpleasant to acknowledge, even sometimes to ourselves, about the bad girl protocol. And even sometimes with the desires, we think we don't deserve it. We don't deserve to be desiring of those things. So what we're starting to do is we're starting to reconnect with those internal elements of ourselves that have been smooshed. And when we start to do that, then we can start to reconnect with who we are. Then we can start to become more aligned, and that helps us step into our power.
Yeah, and it does take time, isn't it? It's almost like fat loss or a workout program or whatever. People think they meditate once or twice or take that space out a few times and they're going to get all the answers. But for me, it probably took a good year to decide that I actually needed to sort something out and that I wasn't happy with what I was doing. So then a good couple of months of really slowing down, exactly like you said, and just taking time out and allowing myself that time. And a part of me felt guilty that I should be working and I should be doing stuff and I shouldn't take this time out to write in a journal or find my values or think about what's in my head. I was always like, no, I need to be doing stuff. But when you do slow down, and I don't know if you've ever read the book, Is It Time to Think? When you just, by Nancy Clancy, I think, and you just give yourself that time to think, it's so powerful. And like you said, there is just constant noise all the time that never lets us stop to understand ourselves and what are our values and what are our beliefs and what do we want to do with our life, because we're just nonstop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, amazing. Any other little tips that would maybe kind of help someone come over any self-doubt that they've got?
I think if they're really, really struggling and it's limiting their life or their experience, it's time to reach out and talk to somebody. I think there are some things you can do for yourself and some things you perhaps need a bit of support with. And the thing I would say is, just to reiterate your point there, the single biggest factor in clients that end up returning to me, so I do some work with them, they get their outcomes and off they go, is when they've let the little mindset resilience practices drop. So that's the 5 minutes of meditation, the short walk, the writing your gratitudes each evening, jotting some things in a journal, and they come back and they say, I'm feeling like I'm starting to struggle. And I'll say, right, so first off, are you using the guided visualizations I recorded for you? Oh, was I supposed to still be using those? Yes, they were a life tool. Have you been using the tools that we learned? No, I felt better, so I stopped doing it. And what about the journaling? And you work through it and you find that all these little tiny maintenance practices, because when we're pushed for time, it's those little things that we drop first, but it's those little things that are going to get us through the difficult times. So it really is, it's no different. Mental well-being is no different to physical well-being. If you don't exercise the muscle, it atrophies. If you don't exercise the muscle.
Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? And a lot of people wait till they're at their worst place to do meditation or to get help, and it's, the reality is that we probably need it even when we're in our best places, to keep practicing these skills and to keep looking into giving ourselves time to think and doing it even when we feel fantastic, because yeah, it's something to keep repeating doing. Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And for us as well, like what I kind of noticed with a lot of the women on who listen to this podcast and a lot of our members, they have been mums or they have been very driven in their career and they put their career first. That what I kind of see a lot of us do seem to always put ourselves to the bottom of a priority list. Everything else comes above that. Is that something that you've worked with clients on before?
It's actually, it's rare that I work with a woman that isn't part of the issue. Yes, I do a lot of work and a lot of conversations around self-care isn't selfish. Self-care is self-preservation. So if you take one tagline away from today, ladies, self-care is self-preservation. Because if you know, and I know it's the metaphor we trot out for everything, but if you don't put your own oxygen mask on first, it's very hard to help anybody else. And what I find is women who are running on empty, have been running on empty for a long time, and get to the point where they just can't keep doing it because they haven't been refueling, haven't been nourishing themselves in whatever way they do that. And it doesn't have to be big stuff. It can be just honoring your bad girl, hearing her. It can be actually acknowledging your desires. It can be a few minutes of meditation. It can be a spa day. It can be investing in some help to get in the shape that you want to get in, get fit and healthy, and learn how to actually, work with your body in a way that feels good. And so you don't only then feel physically strong when you work out, you feel more mentally resilient as well. So it's actually, it doesn't have to be this great big time consuming things. There are little ways you can start to build things in, but ultimately it comes down to self-worth. When we put ourselves at the bottom of the list, it's because for whatever reason, we don't think we are as worthy as somebody else. That's often the root cause. Sometimes it's people pleasing, but again, that's about worthiness. That's about, I have to make these people happy so they like me or accept me. And so I see a lot of the self-worth being, it's a big hole where the self-worth should be, or the people pleasing, because people are frightened, women are frightened that they're not good enough as who they are. They have to do everything for everybody, and that makes them good enough or okay or accepted, not even good enough, often acceptable. And I think that's it. It's and that's kind of the core issue that has to be worked on in order to figure out, well, where is this idea that you are unworthy come from? And then we can reframe that, we can rewrite it, we can help get past it.
Yeah.
So
perfect. And I do think exactly like you said there, like it doesn't need to be a lot, because I think when you are overwhelmed and you do have this list of things to do, that it is easy to forget about yourself and just go, well, if I was to exercise or if I was to cook myself a meal, that's more time and I don't have that time. But it doesn't need to be every day. It doesn't need to be every hour. It can just be a little 20 minutes here and there, like you said, of meditation or exercising. Or if it is with kids, getting kids involved with it, because we know it's good for them as well, that there is little tiny ways that you can start adding in things to bring yourself up that priority list. And I do firmly believe that when we look after you, everything else follows suit?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's about particularly, you know, whether you're a parent, whether you're a leader, you know, when you look after yourself, you show up as the best version of yourself for the people in your life around you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not only good for you, it's good for everybody else as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely. Okay, amazing. So I think I've only got 2 questions I was going to ask before we go today. So, like, how do you feel women can know when they are really optimal and they're at the best place? Because I think sometimes women can be guilty of being in a good place and wanting more and more and more and more. So how do we know when we're at like this peak performance or we're at our full potential, as we would say on Lead Her? What would you say? How would you say we can define that, or how do we know we're at that best place?
So I can tell you what my perspective on it is.
That would be perfect.
It's only my perspective, because everybody's going to have a different one. And here's the thing, when I worked in corporate, I earned a 6-figure salary. I drove a brand new Mercedes, wore all the Karen Millen suits, mostly because that's the only brand that actually fits me, because I'm so awkward of a shape. But anyway, and I kept thinking, why am I not happy? Why am I still, I've got everything. I've got the power suit. I've got the high-powered job in London. I've got the nice, smart car. What's wrong with me? And actually, for a while, that forced me to progress and get promotion on promotion, because each time I got to that point of, but I'm still not happy, I'd go for a promotion to try and earn more money, get more prestige, a higher level job title, whatever. None of it worked. Yes, I love my car. I loved it. And when I got rid of it, because you can't fit 2 boisterous dogs in a coupe, just doesn't work.
Yeah.
I was gutted, but I didn't need it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, I got to a point where however much, whatever my job title, however much I earned, it just wasn't making a difference. And so I actually completely deconstructed and redefined my idea of success. And so I had absorbed this idea, I guess, from society. It wasn't my parents. They were always just really pleased that I did well in school, and really pleased that, you know, I was a helpful, polite person. You know, they didn't necessarily ever need me to do anything wonderful. They just needed me to be happy being me. And I think the thing is that society kind of sells us this idea of all this stuff that we should be or own or do. And I just absorbed it. And that had become my idea of what I thought success was.
Mm-hmm.
But when I actually looked at it, it wasn't my idea of success.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this principle I'd absorbed. And when I shook that off and really looked at it, that was when I walked out of that career and, well, trained to become a therapist and coach. And that involved a massive pay cut and getting rid of the Mercedes. And do you know what? I live a much simpler life, and lots of people have benefited from my wardrobe when I sold it on Vinted. So that's but you know, everything is simplified. I live a much simpler, calmer, happier life.
Mm-hmm.
I take walks with my dogs every morning. I take huge joy in when the bluebells start to come through, because that means it's spring and it will soon be warming up, maybe not this year. And summer, I'm sat here with the heating on. You know, I take time actually to take a minute out during the day and sit in the garden and watch the big fat bumblebee buzzing lazily around the plants collecting pollen. It brings me joy. So everything is simpler. It's all scaled down, because once I realized that for me, it was about doing a job that I love where I'm helping people. It was about having conversations like this to help as many people as possible to feel more comfortable to continue the conversation. It was about spending time with the people and the 4-legged friends I love most, not living at a hotel and driving for 5 hours to get home on a Friday night, you know? So actually, I would really suggest that, you know, you're living up to your full potential when you get that sense of quiet contentment.
Mm-hmm.
The caveat to that is as human beings, we have a range of emotions for a reason. If we don't feel sad sometimes, we don't know what happy is. If we don't feel discontent, we don't feel content. But as a baseline, that kind of, I'm in a good place, I'm living a good life, I feel comfortable with what I do and with how I do it, I feel like I'm authentically presenting myself to the world. For me, that's it.
Wow. I love every little bit of that you've said. Yeah, just being outdoors and walking the dog. It's just lighting the fire in winter as well. Like I know you said about spring and coming into spring, but for me, even going into winter, when everyone hates winter, I'm like, I can get my fire on and we can get candles and all these lovely little things daily do make us so much more happy than the things that are far away from us, because these are things we get daily, little daily joys that make us happy and make us feel good. And sometimes you can be so busy again and you just don't realize all of this and you just want to get on holiday, and then you get on holiday and then you still then want to be somewhere else, and it never ends.
No, it doesn't. And you know, there is no one definition of what feeling like you're living to your full potential is, or feeling like you have created a life of success for yourself. And there's no right or wrong. Some people will thrive in the environment that I found unfulfilling, and that's perfect. We need different people that enjoy different things and get sparked to joy from different ways of being. So, you know, it's not about right or wrong, it's about what's right for you.
Yeah,
Not
perfect.
necessarily what you've just absorbed from society without realizing it.
Amazing. I think that's a perfect way to finish our podcast today. I feel very relaxed coming down to the end of it there. But no,
Well,
it's been absolutely awesome today, Kate. And for anyone that maybe feels they've got more questions they want to ask you, or they want to read more of your stuff, like where can we find Kate?
we can find Kate at www.origami, as in paper folding origami, -life.com.
Mhm.
Or just Kate at origami-life.com. But what I'm going to do after this is actually I'm going to send you a very short 4-minute moment of calm meditation to send out to all your ladies from me, so that if they did want to try just taking 4 short minutes, perhaps, you know, if they're having a stressful day at the office, they can nip into the ladies' room and pop the iPod on and listen to it there or something for a moment. Yes, so I'll send that over so they at least have a tool to have a try with if they'd like to. And yeah, perhaps you could pop my details out with that as well.
Yeah, I'll pop that all on the podcast description. But that's so kind of you. Thank you for doing that for us, because I know we'll really, really
You're
benefit from that.
welcome. You're so welcome.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you everyone else for listening, and I'll leave Kate's details in the description. I hope you have a fantastic week, and I'll speak to you all very soon.